Think about what happens when your phone installs a major software update overnight.
Oh yeah, you wake up and nothing is where it should be.
Right, exactly. The buttons are in different places, your apps behave weirdly, and, for a few days you're just scrambling to figure out the new rules of the system.
Because everything underneath has been completely rewired while you were sleeping. It's a sudden jolt to your whole routine.
Now imagine that kind of sudden, sweeping update, but instead of your phone, it's being applied to the entire country.
Or the entire global economy, really.
Yeah. When sweeping federal policies or international trade agreements shift, it's essentially a system-wide software update for society.
Which is a terrifying thought for the people managing those systems.
Truly. And those macro decisions at the very top, they trickle all the way down to the apps you use, the schools your kids attend, and, the supply chains building the actual tech sitting in your pocket.
They touch absolutely everything.
They do. So today, we are taking you, yes, you listening right now, into a comprehensive stack of sources from a July 2, 2026 briefing.
It's a big one.
Huge. We are looking at global policy, emerging AI, cyber threats, and medical innovation, all through the lens of how massive top-level decisions hit the ground level. We want to understand how global innovation is, frankly, racing to keep up with these massive societal updates. Okay, let's unpack this.
Looking at the policy updates in this briefing, I think we actually have to start with a massive societal software update that, well, didn't happen.
Right.
Which is honestly just as impactful as one that did.
You're talking about the Supreme Court. On the final day of its term, the court struck down the executive order that sought to end birthright citizenship.
Exactly.
It was a 6-3 ruling, and they determined that the guarantee of birthright citizenship rests firmly on constitutional grounds. So they ultimately rejected the order that was issued on the first day of the president's second term.
And the broader legal context here is really important. This was a highly mixed term for the court.
Yeah, they were all over the place, right?
Well, they checked the executive branch on this specific constitutional interpretation, but they also expanded executive power in several other cases during this exact same session.
So it wasn't just a broad ideological sweep.
No, not at all. It was a very strict constitutional ruling focused entirely on this one specific issue.
Right. But what caught my eye in the briefing wasn't actually the constitutional law aspect of it.
Oh.
It was the immediate civic and technological fallout, or I guess the lack thereof. Because that constitutional answer is clear now, hospitals, schools, state agencies, they all dodged a massive chaotic overhaul of their identity and enrollment software.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about the sheer volume of databases in this country that rely on a stable legal definition of citizenship.
It's basically all of them.
Right. If you are, say, an IT administrator for a state school system, your enrollment databases are built on specific fields and verification protocols.
Yeah.
If birthright citizenship had been overturned, those systems would have required an immediate, just massive migration.
And school enrollment offices were already bracing for this. The immense paperwork churn, the privacy risks of having to suddenly re-verify, categorize, and securely store new legal statuses for literally millions of student records.
It would have been an IT nightmare.
A last-minute cancellation of the worst IT migration imaginable.
Truly.
But, while the databases powering our local schools get to remain stable, the bedrock underlying our physical hardware is actually starting to fracture.
Yes. The trade situation.
I'm talking about the USMCA, the North American Trade Pact between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada.
This is a huge shift. On July 1st, the administration just let a key extension deadline pass.
Starting the clock on the pact's unwinding.
Exactly. While officials say they are seeking an improved deal.
Which is a massive reversal considering the same president signed this agreement back in 2018 and at the time called it the most important trade deal in the world.
Right. And to put in perspective, this pact governs roughly $2 trillion in annual trade.
$2 trillion is a number so big it just loses all meaning.
It's incomprehensible.
So how does the unwinding of the USMCA actually hit the tech supply chain and ultimately, the wallet of the person listening to this?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at how modern technology is physically built. A smartphone or a data center server rack isn't built in just one place anymore.
Right. It's global.
Very much so. Much of North America's tech supply chain is completely reliant on the certainty that the USMCA provides around tariff structures and what are called rules of origin.
Okay, rules of origin being like the legal definition of where a product is from based on where its internal components were actually made.
Spot on. Let's trace a hypothetical semiconductor. The raw silicon might be processed in the US, right?
Hmm.
Then sent down to Mexico for specialized testing and packaging.
Yeah?
And then maybe it's shipped up to Canada to be assembled into a final server component.
Got it.
Under the USMCA, that component crosses those borders without getting hit by heavy tariffs at every single checkpoint, because the rules of origin classify it broadly as a North American product.
So it flows smoothly.
Exactly. If you are a manufacturer, your entire business model, your profit margins, and your logistics rely entirely on that specific tariff exemption.
Wow. So if the pact unwinds, that same semiconductor suddenly gets taxed 3 different times before it even reaches a store shelf.
Yes, the cost to build the device spikes dramatically, and that premium gets passed directly to the consumer.
So our gadgets just get way more expensive.
The physical hardware gets more expensive, yes, but the digital infrastructure does too.
Wait, how so?
Well, the USMCA also governs cross-border data flows. Cloud data arrangements between massive server farms in Toronto, Texas, and Monterey, they rely on these agreements to move data freely across the continent.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, if the pact dies, we could see new data sovereignty laws pop up, meaning tech companies might have to build redundant, wildly expensive data centers in all 3 countries just to comply with localized laws.
And speaking of data crossing borders, that brings us to data completely flooding our networks.
Hi.
Because while politicians debate the cost of server farms, the 48-team World Cup, co-hosted by the US, Mexico, and Canada, is actively stress testing the servers we already have.
The ultimate shared global event dominating the summer. It's everywhere.
It really is. The tournament is in the round of 32 right now, and Team USA just advanced after a Folarin-Balogun goal against Bosnia-Herzegovina.
What a match.
Insane match, especially because Balogun later picked up a red card, creating absolute chaos online. LeBron James was tweeting about it, the home crowds are just packing the stadiums, and literally billions of people are watching live.
The sheer scale of it is staggering.
It's a massive cultural moment, sure, but reading the briefing, I couldn't help but think of it as a digital earthquake.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, you have stadium networks attempting to handle 80,000 fans simultaneously trying to upload 4K video to their social feeds.
All at the exact same second.
Right, and globally, you have content delivery systems routing high-definition live streams to billions of smart TVs and phones without a single frame dropping.
It's kind of a miracle it works at all.
It is. And behind the scenes, sophisticated AI anti-piracy systems are actively scanning the web in real time to shut down unauthorized broadcasts. Keeping the screen from buffering during a World Cup match is a monumental feat of digital engineering and processing power.
And processing power requires, well, highly advanced chips, which explains the quiet $10 billion earthquake happening in the hardware space right now.
A huge pivot.
Yeah, Qualcomm is reportedly in early talks to acquire an AI chip startup called Tenstorrent.
Tenstorrent carries serious engineering weight in the industry. It's heavily associated with a chip veteran named Jim Keller.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, he has a legendary track record in semiconductor design across multiple major tech companies.
So I saw the term RISC-V all over the section of the briefing, and frankly, my eyes kind of glazed over.
Fair enough. It's quite technical.
I know it's a chip architecture, but why is a hardware acronym triggering a $10 billion bidding war from a company like Qualcomm? I mean, don't they usually just make chips for smartphones?
They do, but smartphone growth is plateauing. Everybody already has one.
Right.
The absolute center of gravity in tech right now is the AI data center, which requires massive, specialized computing power. To understand why Tenstorrent's RISC-V architecture is worth $10 billion, think of a chip's architecture like the underlying language that software uses to speak to the physical hardware.
Okay, the translation layer.
Exactly. For decades, those languages have been highly proprietary. Companies like Intel or ARM own the language, and if you want to build a chip using it, you pay them a massive licensing toll.
So you have to pay just to use the language.
Right. But RISC-V is an open instruction set architecture. It's an open source standard.
Oh, I see. So it's like moving from a highly guarded, expensive proprietary recipe to a community cookbook where anyone can tweak the ingredients without paying a toll.
That is a perfect analogy. For a long time, RISC-V was viewed as kind of an academic pursuit or maybe just an enthusiast project.
Like Linux in the early days.
Exactly like that. But a $10 billion bid from Qualcomm proves that this open standard is moving to the dead center of the AI hardware race. They are betting that the future of AI infrastructure shouldn't be locked behind a single company's proprietary toll booth.
So Qualcomm is betting $10 billion that AI requires an entirely new hardware foundation.
Yes.
But while the engineers are building this incredibly powerful engine, lawmakers are panicking because no one has agreed on the steering wheel, let alone the speed limits.
It's a mess out there.
The briefing outlines an absolute scramble to govern AI, from local school boards all the way up to the Senate.
The technology is iterating in weeks, while the bureaucracy moves in years. Lawmakers are feeling immense pressure to close that gap.
Case in point, Ohio just hit a hard deadline on July 1st. Every public, community, and STEM school in the state is now legally required to adopt an AI policy covering academic integrity and data privacy.
Right, they have to have it on the books now.
The state offered a model framework, but districts are being forced to implement these rules right now, today. And it's not just Ohio. The briefing tracks 71 different bills across 27 states attempting to address AI in classrooms.
We are watching a massive, completely decentralized race to write the rules of the future.
And the variation between these states is fascinating. Take California's AB 1159. It is aggressively focused on data privacy.
They restrict.
It legally bars companies from using student data to train their AI models, and it extends privacy protections to almost any online service a school uses. But then you look at South Carolina's proposal, and it takes a completely different philosophical approach.
Right. South Carolina is deeply focused on the human element. Their legislation requires written parental opt-in. It flat out bans AI from replacing licensed teachers in core instruction, and it legally ensures that any AI-driven high-stakes decision about a student has mandatory human oversight.
Protect the data in California, keep a human in the loop in South Carolina. But into this messy state-level laboratory comes the federal government. Representatives Jay Obernolt and Lori Trahan just released the Great American Artificial Intelligence Act.
A massive piece of legislation.
It's a 269-page bipartisan draft focusing on frontier AI and cybersecurity, but controversially, it proposes preempting some of these state laws. So what does this all mean? If I'm a school district or an ed tech developer, doesn't a federal preemption risk wiping out the exact protections, like California's strict data privacy that local advocates just fought tooth and nail to pass?
This raises an important question, and it really strikes at the core tension of modern tech governance. Because tech companies and school administrators are desperate for a clean, navigable national standard.
Sure, they just want one rule book.
Right. If you are building an educational platform, engineering your software to comply with 50 completely different, sometimes contradictory state laws is a logistical nightmare. It heavily stifles innovation.
Yeah, you end up spending your entire budget on compliance lawyers instead of software engineers.
Exactly. But local advocates counter that the federal government moves notoriously slowly, and they frequently water down regulations to appease industry lobbyists.
Which is a valid fear.
Very valid. They view states like California and South Carolina as laboratories of democracy, capable of creating aggressive, localized protections that reflect what parents in those specific communities actually demand. A broad federal preemption would flatten all of those local safeguards into a single, potentially much weaker national standard.
And we are having this messy, highly theoretical debate in the U.S., while the European Union is simply moving forward.
They are not waiting.
No. The EU AI Act's transparency rules for high-risk systems have a hard compliance date of August 2nd. The contrast between the U.S. circulating legislative drafts and the EU enforcing an active rulebook is glaring.
It reveals a significant global fracture. We lack a unified approach to governing systems that inherently cross borders.
The vulnerability of those borders is honestly the most alarming part of this entire briefing.
Yeah, the cybersecurity section is sobering.
Because while politicians debate the long-term theoretical rules of AI, our current digital infrastructure is actively on fire. There's a terrifying gap between high-minded oversight and the reality of ground-level security.
So true. I mean, the UN and the International Telecommunication Union just launched the AI for Good Global Commission in Geneva. They're bringing together top tech executives and heads of state to coordinate global AI governance.
Which sounds great, right? Until you realize that launch happened the exact same week. A UN scientific panel released a stark warning stating that AI development is entirely outpacing science and policy, posing what they called catastrophic risks.
The contrast is wild.
It feels like the UN formed a blue ribbon committee to casually debate the philosophical nature of fire safety, while down in the basement, the IT departments are running around with extinguishers battling raging infernos.
The basement is actively burning. While we debate the hypothetical risks of future frontier AI, the legacy software systems holding our current infrastructure together are being breached right now. The briefing details 3 severe active threats happening right this second. First, a flaw in Cisco's Unified Communications Manager.
And that's the phone and video platform used by thousands of major organizations, right?
Exactly. It's ubiquitous.
The vulnerability is CVE 2026-2230. The briefing says it allows an unauthenticated remote attacker to escalate privileges all the way to root. For anyone who isn't a cybersecurity expert, what does escalating to root actually mean in practice?
Getting root access means the hacker has obtained the absolute master keys to the entire building.
Oh, wow.
They aren't just sneaking into a guest room. They have the administrative power to change the locks, turn off the security cameras, and completely rewrite the fundamental rules of the server.
So complete system takeover.
Complete takeover. And then there is the Progress Kemp Loadmaster flaw, which is rated 9.6 out of 10 for severity.
A 9.6 is basically a digital alarm bell ringing at full volume.
It is. The briefing calls it a critical command injection flaw through the API.
Okay, unpack that for us.
An API is essentially the doorway that software uses to talk to other software. A command injection means the attacker figures out how to bypass the bouncer at that doorway and pass malicious instructions directly into the device's brain.
So the system just does whatever the hacker wants.
Exactly. The system executes the hacker's commands, thinking they are legitimate administrative requests.
That's terrifying. And finally, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, added a SolarWinds Surview flaw to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog.
The KEV catalog.
Right. The KEV catalog is the list where federal agencies have a hard mandatory deadline to fix the issue, and private companies are heavily advised to drop everything and patch it immediately, because the bug is being weaponized in the wild.
And this brings us to the most terrifying reality of this modern cybersecurity landscape, which is the evaporation of the patch window.
The patch window.
Yeah, the patch window is a time between a company announcing a fix for a flaw and hackers figuring out how to exploit that flaw. With the Cisco vulnerability, a proof of concept was made public, and exploitation began within roughly 24 hours.
Are you kidding? 24 hours.
IT professionals have literally just one day to update their entire enterprise systems before attackers are actively inside the network.
It is a relentless, grueling pace. Between the 24-hour cyber fires, the massive trade disruptions, and the AI governance scramble, it is incredibly easy to feel buried by info overload and cyber panic.
It really is.
Which is why I'm so glad the briefing included some genuinely quiet triumphs. Stepping away from the panic reveals that innovation is still working in the background to quietly save lives.
Steady science often gets drowned out by breaking news, but it is where the most profound changes occur.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Biomedical engineering students at King's College London have built strikingly realistic synthetic organs to train surgeons.
This is incredible tech.
Yeah, and this wasn't just like a 3D printed piece of hard plastic. They used specialized hydrogels to replicate the exact tactile feedback, the wetness, and the physical resistance of real human tissue.
Which is vital, because surgeons rely heavily on muscle memory. A rubber dummy doesn't behave like a real liver when you cut into it.
Right, the texture matters.
Immensely. By replicating the exact tissue mechanics, they created a cheaper, highly ethical way for trainees to rehearse complex procedures repeatedly, without relying on animal tissue or scarce human cadavers.
It widens access to elite, hands-on medical training in regions where teaching resources might be incredibly thin. It's a physical, incredibly practical breakthrough that quietly makes skilled surgical work much safer for the patient.
And what's fascinating here is how this synthetic organ connects to the broader timeline of medical innovation. The synthetic tissue is a brilliant tool for today, but the true miracles of medical science often take decades to fully materialize.
That perfectly sets up the most uplifting data point in this entire stack of sources.
I love this stat.
It's amazing. Between 2020 and 2024, in England, there were exactly 0 deaths from cervical cancer among women aged 20 to 24.
Zero.
Doctors credit this historic milestone entirely to the HPV vaccine, which was rolled out to school-age girls starting in 2008.
The first time on record with 0 such deaths in that demographic. A future with almost no cervical cancer is now firmly within sight.
But 2008 was 16 years ago. A vaccine administered during the early days of the smartphone era is just now showing its ultimate result.
In data science, we talk about leading and lagging indicators, We are culturally obsessed with leading indicators, the massive AI acquisition, the overnight software patch, the immediate legislative draft.
The stuff that makes headlines today.
Right. But the most profound impacts on human life are lagging indicators. A routine, unglamorous jab given in a middle school gymnasium in 2008 quietly shows up 16 years later as an entire generation of lives simply not lost.
It really reframes how we look at progress. When you step back and look at the massive scope of this briefing, you see how the macro decisions inevitably hit the micro reality.
Everything is connected.
Supreme Court rulings stabilize the databases running our schools. Global trade pacts dictate the price of the hardware in our servers. The explosion of AI processing power forces local school districts to write new academic rules, while IT departments fight 24-hour cyber fires just to keep the lights on.
It's a constant cycle.
Yet beneath the noise of all that immediate chaos, quiet medical breakthroughs are literally rewriting the future of human health.
And the vast scope of these updates leaves a final thought for you to mull over, specifically regarding those time horizons of impact.
Yeah.
We expend so much of our daily intellectual energy panicking over a cybersecurity patch window that closes in 24 hours. We get completely swept up in the immediate, visceral drama of a World Cup soccer match or the daily churn of political debates.
It's exhausting.
But the most profound, world-altering successes, like the eradication of a cancer through the HPV vaccine, take almost 2 decades of quiet, invisible work to show their true results. So the challenge is this. In your own life and work, how much of your energy are you spending fighting today's digital fires versus investing in the quiet, steady progress that will pay off 16 years from now?
A brilliant question to leave you with. Thank you for taking the plunge with us to decode this stack of sources. Hopefully it helps you understand the mechanics of the next societal software update when it hits. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.